It was an ordinary October morning in the quiet town of Pine Hollow, the kind of place where people still left their doors unlocked and everyone greeted each other by name. The town was surrounded by rolling hills and thick woods that turned orange and gold every autumn. On October 14th, 1998, the air was crisp, the fog was heavier than usual, and the day began just like any other. Parents hurried their children out the door, backpacks swung over shoulders, and laughter filled the streets as the familiar yellow school bus, Route 27, made its way through the narrow country roads. The driver, Thomas Reed, was a calm, patient man in his 50s who had been driving the same route for over 15 years. Every child on his bus trusted him, and every parent did too, that morning. 12 children boarded the bus at their usual stops. The youngest, a 6-year-old girl named Emily Carter, was the last to climb aboard. Witnesses recalled seeing her mother waving as the bus disappeared into the fog, turning onto Hollow Creek Road, a long winding path that led through dense forest before joining the main highway to Pine Hollow Elementary. But the bus never reached the highway. By 8 a.m., teachers began to notice that none of the students from Route 27 had arrived. Calls were made to parents, who all confirmed their children had gotten on the bus that morning. The school principal initially assumed a breakdown had occurred somewhere along the route, perhaps due to engine trouble or the heavy fog. When an hour passed with no sign of the bus and no communication from the driver, concern turned into panic. Sheriff Alan Monroe organized a search team, believing the bus may have slipped off the narrow road into a ditch or embankment. But when officers and volunteers reached Hollow Creek Road, they found only tire marks leading a short distance into the fog before stopping abruptly. Beyond that, the dirt was smooth, undisturbed, as if the massive vehicle had simply evaporated. There were no skid marks, no debris, and no sign of struggle. By afternoon, the missing bus had become the only thing anyone in Pine Hollow could talk about. Parents gathered at the school, refusing to leave until they knew something. Police cars lined the streets, helicopters circled overhead, and an uneasy silence settled over the town. No one knew it yet. But this was the beginning of a mystery that would haunt Pine Hollow for generations. The search for the missing school bus began before sunset on the same day. Dozens of townspeople volunteered, carrying flashlights, maps, and radios, hoping they would find the bus stuck somewhere in the dense woods. The sheriff's department divided the area into grids. Checking every side road and dirt path along Hollow Creek, helicopters flew overhead, their spotlights sweeping across the fog-covered trees. But there was no trace of metal, glass, or even tire rubber. The only thing searchers could hear was the faint rustle of the wind through the branches. It was as though the bus, and everyone on it, had been swallowed by the earth. By the next morning, more than 100 people had joined the effort, including local farmers, state police, and divers from nearby counties. The river that ran parallel to Hollow Creek Road was searched inch by inch, but divers surfaced empty-handed. Dogs were brought in to pick up the scent of the children or the driver, but the animals refused to follow any trail beyond the point where the tire marks stopped. It was as if the scent ended there too. The sheriff ordered drones and helicopters to scan the surrounding forests and fields. But even from above, there was no sign of the missing yellow bus, as days turned into weeks. Fear spread through Pine Hollow like a storm. The media arrived, reporters crowding the small police station, asking questions no one could answer. The parents of the missing children clung to hope, refusing to believe their sons and daughters were gone forever. Candlelight vigils were held near the school, and photographs of the children lined the fences. Each day without new information made the silence heavier. The sound of the morning school bus, once comforting, now filled the town with dread. Then came the stories. Some locals claimed to hear the distant sound of a bus engine late at night near the woods. Others said they saw faint lights moving through the fog only to disappear when approached. The authorities dismissed these claims as imagination born from fear, but they couldn't ignore how many people swore they saw something. The forest around Hollow Creek became a place no one wanted to go near. By the end of the first month, the search was officially suspended. The case was cold, and the people of Pine Hollow were left with nothing, no answers, no closure. Just the haunting question of how a school bus full of children could vanish without leaving a single trace behind. As time passed and the search ended, Pine Hollow slowly tried to return to normal, but the shadow of the missing bus lingered everywhere. The empty seats in the classroom, the unclaimed lunches in the cafeteria, and the silent homes on quiet streets reminded everyone of what had been lost. When months turned into years, the story of Route 27 became something between a tragedy and a ghost tale. With no evidence or explanation, people began creating their own theories. Some were rational, others deeply unsettling. One of the earliest theories suggested that the bus had plunged into an undiscovered sinkhole. Hollow Creek was known for its soft soil and underground caverns, so it seemed possible. Geological teams were brought in to scan the area, but their surveys showed nothing, no collapse, no hidden caves, no sign that the ground had ever shifted. Another idea claimed that the driver, Thomas Reed, had planned everything, taking the children somewhere far away. But that theory quickly fell apart when investigators found no financial activity, no communication, and no sightings of him anywhere. His bank account and home remained untouched, his belongings still where he left them. It was as if he had vanished too. Over the years, strange reports began to surface from people living near. Hollow Creek, a retired deputy, confessed that during the first week of the investigation, the search team's compasses began spinning wildly near a bend in the road and their radios went completely silent. When they stepped away from the area, everything returned to normal. The spot became known as the Silent Stretch. Some believe there was a magnetic disturbance underground, while others whispered about something far stranger, something beyond science. In the following decade, paranormal investigators, reporters, and self-proclaimed experts visited Pine Hollow. They all left with theories but no proof. Some claimed the bus had slipped into a time rift or a parallel dimension. Others believed it was part of a government experiment gone wrong. Nothing could be confirmed, yet everyone agreed on one thing: the area around Hollow Creek felt different. The air there was colder, heavier, and filled with an uneasy silence that seemed to watch whoever entered. The families of the missing children never gave up hope. Every October 14th, they gathered near the road with candles and photographs, praying for answers. But year after year, the same emptiness greeted them. Route 27 had disappeared, and so had the sense of safety Pine Hollow once knew. 7 years after the disappearance, the mystery of the missing school bus was nothing more than a painful memory for most of Pine Hollow. The story had faded from national news, and even the most determined reporters had moved on. Then, in the spring of 2005, everything changed. A group of hikers exploring the deep woods beyond Hollow Creek stumbled upon something unexpected. Hidden behind a thick wall of trees covered in vines and rust was a vehicle that looked eerily familiar. When the hikers got closer, they realized it was a yellow school bus with the faded number 27 barely visible on its side. The discovery reignited the nightmare that the town had tried to forget. Investigators arrived quickly, sealing off the area. The bus was found miles away from where it had disappeared, deep in terrain that should have been impossible for it to reach. The dirt path leading to it was too narrow and uneven for a vehicle of that size, and there were no tire tracks leading in or out. Inside the bus, every seat was torn and decayed, as though time had passed unevenly within it. Windows were shattered, and the floor was covered in a thin layer of dark residue that looked like ash mixed with oil. Yet the strangest thing was the dashboard clock. It was still running, ticking steadily, as if frozen in time since that October morning years ago. Forensic teams studied the bus carefully. They expected to find human remains, fingerprints, or evidence of where the children had gone, but the interior was completely clean. There was no blood, no clothing, and no trace of life. What baffled the investigators even more was that the bus did not appear to have been sitting in the forest for 7 years. Its tires were deflated, but the metal wasn't rusted through. And the paint, though faded, showed signs of recent exposure. Tests suggested it had been abandoned for only a few weeks. When the bus was towed back to the police impound lot, strange events began to occur. Electrical systems near it malfunctioned, and the officers guarding it reported hearing faint sounds, soft laughter, whispers, and the echo of a bus engine idling in the distance. Within days, rumors spread again, and the townspeople began to wonder if the forest had returned something that never truly left. The reappearance of the bus should have brought answers, but instead, it deepened the mystery. Experts from across the country arrived in Pine Hollow, each with a new theory. Some said it was a case of human abduction, others suggested supernatural causes. The bus was placed in a secured evidence lot, where it became a grim attraction for journalists and curious locals. Investigators hoped that new technology might uncover what had happened, but every test seemed to lead nowhere. There were no fingerprints, no DNA, and no mechanical explanation for how a vehicle could vanish for 7 years and return without damage. The black residue found inside could not be identified. Scientists described it as organic in nature, but unlike any known substance, it gave off a faint odor of burnt plastic and left those who touched it feeling nauseous for hours. As months passed, strange things began to occur in town again. Power outages struck without warning. Radios picked up whispers when tuned to certain frequencies. And a few residents living near the woods reported hearing the sound of children laughing at night. Others swore they saw dim lights moving through the trees in the exact spot where the bus had been discovered. Law enforcement tried to dismiss the reports, but even officers began to feel uneasy patrolling the area after dark. The townspeople started avoiding Hollow Creek altogether in 2010. 5 years after the bus was recovered, the impossible happened once more. One morning, the evidence lot gate was found open, and the bus was gone. Security cameras had stopped recording sometime during the night, and no alarm was triggered. The guard on duty claimed he heard the sound of an engine starting, followed by a child's faint laughter. But when he looked, there was nothing. The bus had vanished again without leaving any tracks. Investigators searched every road, river, and forest in the region. They found nothing, just like the first time. Today, the case remains unsolved. The story of Route 27 has become a legend told in whispers, especially on foggy October mornings. Some say the bus still appears in the woods from time to time, its headlights glowing through the mist before fading into darkness. For the people of Pine Hollow, the haunting never ended. They still wait for answers that may never come, is trapped between truth and something far stranger, in a mystery that time itself refuses to reveal.